Hey, today I wanted to do a book review of Rejection by tulathimutte, which I just finished this week and found absolutely amazing. It is a short story collection that was published in 2024, I think in September, so last year. And I first heard about it, I believe Nathan's Nook was the first person I heard speak about this book, and then it did also end up in Alex from What Page Are You On's Best Books of the Years, which did just keep it kind of top of mind for me. It was nominated for the National, it was longlisted for the National Book Award, and I did see it talked about kind of in different year-end wrap-ups of being one of the best books of last year, and just had me curious because everyone who seemed to describe this book described it using a whole bunch of weird and I guess provocative language. I've heard it described using the words brutal, shameless, disgusting, satirical, and most commonly used to describe this book, I've seen a lot of saying it is just a chronically online book, which really piqued my interest, and I finally got around to it this last week. Because it's a short story collection, I thought I would maybe read a short story a day, but I soon found out after reading the first story that that's not how this book was going to go for me. It was way too interesting, and I read it over the span of 2 days. And yeah, just finished a couple days ago, and I'm so excited to talk about it because it was really an amazing book that I thoroughly enjoyed and I think raises so many interesting questions. I think it's a great book for conversation. As the book implies by its title, it is heavily focused on the idea of rejection and follows various characters as they deal with various rejections throughout their life. And the characters do appear in each other's stories. They are not like thoroughly connected short stories, but there is kind of these little Easter eggs when someone is mentioned in another story within the book, which I did really enjoy. The first story is called The Feminist, and it follows a man who is obsessively trying to be like a good guy, a feminist, an ally to women in such an overbearing way, and his obsession with being morally correct really becomes something that is off-putting in his personality, and he deals with the rejection from women because he is so off-putting and he really isn't that great, and this leads him to be disillusioned and make terrible choices and decisions and finds himself down a very toxic thought pattern relating to women. So really comes full circle, not, I guess, full circle, but, you know, does kind of a 180 of what he is attempting to accomplish with being a feminist to the realities of his actual attitudes towards women. The second second short story is called Pics, and it follows a woman's obsession with a very short-lived sexual experience and the rejection thereafter, after that doesn't lead to her desired relationship with this person. And she seeks comfort in a group chat of her friends, and ultimately they find her behavior and attitude towards this rejection so off-putting that the group chat then implodes in a very over-the-top way. The next one, The Ballad of Sexual Repression, deals with a character who's incredibly fearful of revealing their sexual desires and fetishes to their partner, and is afraid of the rejection that they believe they may face, and ultimately they do. The story Our Dope Future is written like a long-winded Am I the Asshole post on Reddit, and just follows an insufferable man, and his dialogue is absolutely riddled with internet slang from the past, say, decade. And that story in particular was just absolutely hilarious. There's a lot of humor in these stories, even though they are dealing with super uncomfortable topics and do kind of have a gross out factor in a way. They do remain very funny and entertaining. Main character is a story who follows one person's use of multiple Twitter accounts to drum up internet drama and virality. And this is kind of an interesting one. It's almost a character who's trying to reject identity. They do not want to be identifiable, yet we find out you cannot escape that. People are interested in how you identify. And sometimes the anonymity makes identifying the person so much more interesting to people. That's kind of the final, what I would call short story in the book, but we do also have the sixth part of the book is titled 16 Metaphors, and it quite literally is that. 16 metaphors just over a couple pages, and they get increasingly more ridiculous and convoluted in their metaphorical language, which is so kind of funny. It almost is an oddity after these super intense stories to have something like that break up the book. But I find this is almost the most rereadable part of the book, these 16 metaphors, because they make you think so hard about what the author is trying to say in such a fun way. They're just quite, I guess, the right word would maybe be stimulating to the brain in the way that he phrases these metaphors and how you are thinking about what they mean, what they say, and how they relate to the book. And then the final short story, which I do think you could kind of consider a short story, is also very different than what we've been following, even though it is entirely so connected. Is called Rejection, and it is the author's fictionalized rejection letter of this very own book, which is amazing. It's so meta in the way that the author, Tony Tulathimutte, is inserting himself into this novel in different ways and makes you question how he is inserting himself or is not. And just the whole idea of identity that's being explored in this book is so fascinating and really comes full circle when the author talks about, when the author makes you question what his identity is of the author of this book and makes you think about the connections between that or lack of connections, really. All of these characters are so unlikable. They're terrible people. You despise them. You are disgusted by their actions. They have no redeeming qualities. But at the same time, they are so fascinatingly human. They are all dealing with issues with rejection, identity, insecurity, which are all so human and are all universal experiences that we all encounter in our lives in various ways. They're just the kind of people who deal with it in the worst way possible. They're reprehensible and nasty and have terrible decision making. If you are sensitive to sexual content in your reading, or you find yourself uninterested in following characters like this, you probably will not like this book. And I do think that this book also has a slight barrier of entry for people who are not super chronically online or well-versed in the ways of the internet of the last 10 years. The author, Tony, talks about, he's 40 or maybe 41 now. I watched an older author interview with him talking about this, of maybe even being at the upper age level for fully getting his book. I think if you are in your early to mid 20s to late 30s, early 40s, this book is incredibly engaging, just with the current landscape of the internet and how it has evolved over the last 10 years. So I do think it really could prove a barrier if you are maybe older than 40 years old to really get into this book, with how much internet slang and little internet microcosms are explored in this. But I don't think that should turn you away, but you might have to work a little harder to understand it. If you like subversive and satirical books, I think you will love this. It is incredibly smart. Tony is an amazing author, I think, and I am so eager to read more from him and to also read what he has published previously. He does have a book that came before this, which I'm super eager to read now, and he's definitely someone that I'll be watching for his releases, because this was absolutely a joy to read, pleasurable in kind of a disgusting way of, this is awful what I'm reading about, and yet I can't look away and I can't stop thinking about it, and I just want to talk about it and would love to talk about it with you if you've read the book. So enjoy the book if you do choose to read it. If you don't enjoy it, I'd also love to hear about it. I do think that this book is made for discussion, and that is a wonderful thing. Bye-bye.